Hi, it's Diederik Elderman here, speaker, trainer, author of 4 published books and founder of Turbocharge Your Practice and Business Productivity Academy. I wanted to share something today. I wanted to share something that vets are really good at, excellent in fact at, and it's learned helplessness. Yeah, that's right. Vets are brilliant at learned helplessness. Let me explain, and I'll start off by citing a study that was done a few years ago by Martin Seligman and Steve Mayer. If you think you've heard the name Martin Seligman before, he's the guy that authored the book called Learned Optimism, and this was part of his study. So they took 3 groups of German Shepherds. One group of German Shepherds was in a harness and had a lever in front of them, and the harness was hooked up to an electric shock device. The second group of German Shepherds had the same harness, the same lever in front of them, and was also hooked up to an electric shock device. The third group of German Shepherds simply had the harness on them, but there was no electric shock device attached to it, nor was there a lever. So that third group was the control group. So the first group of German Shepherds, they were shocked through the harness. They had the lever in front of them, and when they pushed the lever, the shock stopped. The shocking stopped. Very quickly, that group of German Shepherds learned to turn the electrical current off by pushing the lever. Now, the second group of German Shepherds, when they were shocked, the lever didn't work, if that makes sense. So when they were shocked, it didn't matter whether they pushed the lever or not, the electrical shocks continued. Now, the first group learnt very quickly to turn the electric shock off by pushing the lever. The second group learnt very quickly that pushing the lever had no effect, and so they simply cowered and became immobile and accepted the shocking. The third group weren't shocked at all, the harness, they were simply the control group. Now, the next thing that was done was that these dogs, excuse me, I just want to close the page on this for a sec. These dogs are put into a playpen, if you like, a large area, which had a divider down the middle, which was not a very tall divider. And the floor on one side was electrified, and the floor on the other side was not electrified. Now, the first group, the ones that, now the dogs could quite easily step over that dividing partition from the shocking side to the non-shocking side by stepping over the partition. So the dogs that had learnt that when they were shocked they could push the lever and the shocking would stop. When the floor on this electrified side was electrified, turned on, they learnt very quickly to step over the dividing partition onto the side that was safe. The dogs, the control group that had the harness on, and they were the control group, they also learned equally quickly that to make the shocking stop, all they had to do was step over the middle partition. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The middle group, the second group, the dogs that had the harness on that were shocked, and when they pushed the lever, nothing happened. As soon as the electrified floor in this area was electrified, they cowered. They never learnt to get away from the shock by stepping over the dividing partition that was so low that they could actually step over it. They simply cowered, lay down, accepted the shock, and accepted the fact that they couldn't do anything about it, even though they could have. So isn't that interesting? So how does this relate to vets and to veterinary? Well, that second group of German Shepherds were classed as having learned helplessness because they couldn't get away from the shock in the first situation where they had the harness on. They had learned to accept the electrical shock and become helpless victims. And these studies were carried through into the human field, not in the same degree. Now, let me give you an example. When people were put in a situation, a similar situation without the electric shocks, of learned helplessness. And let me give you an example of learned helplessness in humans. So you have a child that is given mathematical stuff in school that is far too hard for him and her. And if that kid is just given more and more and more and harder and harder and harder and can't do anything with it and can't get the help and the teachers ignore them and everything else, that child becomes learned helplessness. He or she becomes a victim and just ignores all the maths and sits in the class and becomes despondent, etc., etc., etc. So the studies showing that happens. Now, interestingly enough, this is where I think vets come into the equation. The second type of child, or the second type of human beings, becomes hyperactive. And when they're put in the same situation and given the same mathematical problems, they become learnedly helpless in another way. So rather than become despondent, depressed, zoning out, sitting with their head on their hand and becoming almost, moribund, if you like, in that class situation, the second type of child will run around like a scatterbrain and go from thing to 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 thing. I'm sure you get the point. They just become hyperactive and do everything they can in order to avoid that mathematical problem or problems. And this is where I see it pertaining to vets. I see the situation all the time where vets do one of two things. And when they're faced with a practice that isn't going the way they want, when they see themselves working slave hours, when they see their practice gross going down because of competition, when they see practice income levels not being the same as their friend the local plumber, when they see they can't put their kids in the kind of school that they'd like to put him or her in, or put braces on Billy Joe's teeth, or drive the sort of car that they want, they become learnedly helpless. They become victims in one of two ways. They either bury their head in the sand and become like that first child that I talked about facing the maths problems. They become despondent, gloomy, disengaged, bury their head in the sand. Oh, nothing's going to work. Nothing's going to work. Woe is me. So there's no point even trying. I'm sorry if that sounds like a vet that you may know. And then the second group of vets become like hyperactive bunny rabbits. Almost like you've seen the ad on TV for the hyperactive bunny with the Duracell battery. And other vets do that. They go from thing to 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 thinking that every solitary thing that they focus on is going to be their saviour, their solution, and is going to fix the practice and make it suddenly go gangbusters. And they never spend long enough on any one item or any one thing to actually get a result, because by the time the result starts to happen, they're already so patient they've moved on to the next shiny object. So that's how I see that Martin Seligman and Steve Mayer's studies are reflected identically in vet by the two forms of learned helplessness. Just like the German Shepherd dog that lays down in the crate or lays down in that area and allows the electric shock to come up through the floor incessantly because they just feel so helpless they can't move. Now, I don't want to leave this video on such a depressing note, because there are solutions. There are many solutions available in vet, and there are coaches, there are mentors, there are programs, there are all sorts of things that you can do in your practice to get out of the learned helplessness situation, if that is you, or if you know a friend. So there's many coaches all over the world. I'm simply one of them. And of course, I'd love you to come to me and come to me for coaching and guiding and mentoring, and I will help you get out of that situation. That's not the reason for this video, though. I'm not, I'm not showcasing my own boat, as it were. But there's many other opportunities. If you haven't looked at the UVP, the Ultimate Veterinary Practice Program, go on their website and join the UVP program. If you're in Western Australia and you're around on the 11th and 12th of September, I have a workshop coming up, a 2-day workshop called the Insane Practice Growth Workshop. It's a 2-day workshop. It's the investment's $379. We've got 5 seats left. And that will show you how to get out of the situation. That workshop is aimed specifically at how to grow your practice and get out of this situation. Guaranteed. Again, this video hasn't been designed to promote that workshop, but I'm simply showcasing all the opportunities that are available out there for you or your friends or your colleagues or your classmates if you see any of them in this situation. This video was designed purely and simply to get you to think about the state of our industry and how common learned helplessness is in our industry. So over and out, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.